It's the state to which the 1949 Geneva Conventions are entrusted, and the host country of the International Committee of the Red Cross. This is how asylum works in Switzerland today. Proportionally, Switzerland admits more asylum seekers on a provisional basis than most other European nations. In 2018, it received 1.9 asylum applications per 1,000 inhabitants, compared to the European average of 1.2 per 1,000 inhabitants. This is how the numbers of asylum requests in Switzerland changed between 2010 and 2019. The majority are only given a temporary right to stay and do not qualify for refugee status. People only get asylum in Switzerland if they can prove they are refugees as defined by the Swiss Asylum Act. The definition was taken from the Geneva Refugee Convention of 1951. Refugees is the designation for people who are persecuted due to their ethnic origin, religion, nationality, membership of a certain social group, or due to their political convictions. An asylum application can be made at the Swiss border or while living in Switzerland. People cannot apply for asylum from outside the country. Applications from high-risk countries are sent to the Federal Intelligence Service to prevent terrorists from entering Switzerland under the guise of asylum seekers. Asylum applications are dealt with initially in the federal centres run by the State Secretariat for Migration, SEM. New rules from 2019 provide for faster decisions and free legal advice for asylum seekers. The decision-making time was cut from 400 to 140 days, including time for appeals. This is expected to lead to processing up to 29,000 asylum applications per year. A fast-track procedure was introduced in 2012 for so-called safe countries, which in 2020 included European, African and Asian states. Applicants from these countries must be processed within 48 hours. Rejected applicants are sent back immediately. The SEM investigates the applicant's identity and origin. They are given an N residence permit while their application is being processed. Applicants must explain why they fled and present evidence. If there are doubts as to their origin, they are quizzed about the country they say they're from. Sometimes language experts are called in to help. There are 3 possible decision outcomes: a B permit, refugee status, an F permit, temporary protection, or a no, which means applicants have to leave the country.
Nein.
Applicants often get rejected if they are considered medical or economic migrants, or if they already filed for asylum in another country that has signed the Dublin Agreement. This agreement aims to quickly determine which member state is responsible for an asylum claim and provides for the transfer of an asylum seeker to that state. Appeals against a negative decision must be lodged with the Federal Administrative Court. When people are not recognised as refugees, they can still be granted temporary residency for their own protection, if, for example, there is war in their country of origin. These people end up with an F permit. These are issued for a year, but are often renewed. In 2018, about a third of all asylum seekers were given F permits. F permit holders may work, but many Swiss employers are reluctant to hire them because of their provisional residence permits. Another problem, their qualifications are often not recognised. Recognised refugees get a 1-year B residence permit in the canton where they're living. This is usually renewed. After legally living in Switzerland for 10 years, they may get a permanent residence permit. In asylum centres, applicants sleep in dormitories with common kitchens and bathrooms. SEM figures show the police were called to federal asylum centres 289 times in 2018. The reasons range from violent behaviour to violations of house rules. If after 140 days an asylum decision hasn't been made, applicants get transferred to one of the 26 cantons. Some cantons have been criticised for keeping people in underground nuclear bunkers. Asylum seekers receive welfare if they don't have any savings. The amount varies depending on the canton and whether the person is travelling alone or as part of a family. In the federal asylum centres, a single person receives 3 francs a day in pocket money. They can also participate in charitable employment schemes working for the community. This pays 5 francs per hour. In 2017, 86% of asylum seekers and refugees received state benefits. The high welfare cost is one of the motivations to get refugees and asylum seekers working. At the moment, about 1/3 of them have jobs. In 2019, new government initiatives came into force to get at least 50% of adults working within 7 years. The cantons receive more money to integrate people into the job market. Language teaching is also being stepped up. Refugees should have at least a basic knowledge of one of the local languages within 3 years. The aim is to get 2/3 of 16 to 25-year-olds into higher education or apprenticeships within 5 years of their arrival in Switzerland.
Nein.
Rejected asylum seekers in Switzerland sometimes go off the radar and live here illegally. The UNIA Union estimates that at least 100,000 people are so-called sans-papiers or undocumented migrants. Many work in badly paid jobs in poor conditions. Asylum policy has been very divisive in Switzerland. The right-wing Swiss People's Party says the country is too easy on asylum seekers. The public has also been quite vocal in the migration debate. There's been resistance to the opening of new asylum centres in many places. Residents fear that their villages lack the necessary infrastructure and that their homes could devalue. While the right wing digs in its heels, human rights groups have called on Switzerland to do more to help those in need. They have criticised current asylum procedures, the restriction of exit and entry times at federal asylum centres, and stop and search procedures. They're also angry about the imprisonment of unsuccessful asylum seekers pending expulsion. Over the next decade, we can expect more changes in the way in which Switzerland deals with asylum. Every year, millions of people are forced to leave their homes due to weather-related disasters. So not only wars, but also climate change will force tens of millions of people to seek refuge elsewhere.